Here is Rick Smith.
So it's still amazing to me that, in this day, we're still having the argument over wearing a damn mask. And look, the right is apoplectic over Jen Psaki saying that even once everyone's vaccinated, we should still be doing this. We should still be social distancing, wearing the mask, washing our hands, doing that stuff. Because, down the road, we could still, for the short term, still infect each other. And I've been saying this since, I guess, last March, when I went to see my doctor, who said, wear the damn mask. And he said, who'll be wearing a mask 6 months after we're all vaccinated, we're all past it? He goes, me, because it's going to take some time. Because this is what the medical profession understands, sanity. We don't seem to have that. I point to Ohio, where they've now got this bill, SB 22, that I guess the legislature now knows more than doctors and health officials. But there was a tweet that grabbed my attention by the Ohio Capitol Journal reporter Tyler Buchanan, who pointed out that this 7-year-old kid seventh grade kid testified that he didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't want to wear a mask anymore because he had to talk louder. He was mad at the social distancing because he had to scream at lunches, and didn't want to sanitize his hands because the dodgeball slipped out of his hands. Aw, so sad. Here to share some thoughts on SB 22. And, well, do the legislators know more than the people than my doctor? That's why I've asked Tyler Buchanan to come talk with us. He's a reporter over at the Ohio Capitol Journal. Tyler, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, appreciate you having me on.
I got to be honest with you. I saw this tweet that you had, and that this 7th grade kid was mad because the ball slips out of his hands, and my first thought is I'm going, okay, you want to be alive, right? You don't want to get sick, but the ball slips.
Yeah, we basically have so what this is another bill from the Ohio legislature, which has Republican supermajorities, House and Senate. Throughout 2020, we saw numerous bills where they're basically trying to limit or restrict the authority of the Ohio Department of Health, which has issued, health orders here in Ohio, a mask mandate early on, stay-at-home orders, shutting down businesses and the like, similar to very much other states. And SB 22, we just had our new term start last month, is kind of the next iteration of that. It basically just allows the legislature to strike down health orders by committee if they don't like them. Basically, what we saw yesterday with SB 22 testimony, as you mentioned, there was a kid that was there. It was basically a long string from the public discussing their inconveniences. So we heard a woman say that she was angry about DeWine's business shutdown because it affected a gluten-free bake shop, and it took away the gluten-free marinara sauce that she enjoyed on her cheesy bread. We heard a guy mention in his testimony that he thought DeWine ruined his marriage. And when he moved away, he was able to watch bands play from his apartment window. And when the mask mandate was issued, the band stopped playing, and now I don't get to watch the bands from my window anymore. So it was basically that for like 2 hours.
Wow.
And, I write for the Ohio Capitol Journal today. It's like, at no point do we stop and talk about in these conversations anymore in the State House, the 11,000 Ohioans that have died already, 47,000 that have been hospitalized, 785,000 that have been infected overall. And the other thing about it is in the Ohio State House doesn't require masks, as you mentioned, the mask wearing. And the committee, as I'm watching it, from home, because I don't want to go into these committee hearings because they're just not safe to go into as a reporter or, whoever, because the entire array of people there are not wearing masks. And we saw a Democratic lawmaker actually leave the committee early on in that SB 22 hearing. And he said, hey, I have an immunocompromised child. I'm out. I don't want to be here. That's where we've gotten to, is where reporters don't want to show up, and where lawmakers who are wearing masks say, I don't know that I feel safe being here.
I mean, the weird thing to me, Tyler, is these are supposed to be the smart people. These are the people that we've elected to represent us and do what's in our best interest collectively. And look, I hear you. I've heard all of the inconveniences. And look, I hate wearing a mask as much as anyone else. I hate the inconveniences as much as anyone else. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that while I may get it and I might survive, There are other people who may not. I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what the person, walking down the street next to me is. So at some point, to me, this is about common decency and something that we've seem to have lost a lot of, especially in our politics. You would think that you would care about your colleagues and their families, but clearly that's not the case.
Yeah, and what I want to make clear is it's not about ribbing any kind of middle schooler who's having, personal struggle with COVID, or forget even children, just adults that are struggling out there. Anybody who's out there struggling. I'm not out here minimizing that there's not personal frustrations and ways that we've all had to change our lives. We all get that.
Yep.
It's just about the conversation when we're having a legislative dialogue about whether or not we should have elected lawmakers who are not necessarily health officials or health experts whatsoever, to give them the authority to strike down health orders. And so we're going to have that conversation, but to have it, we're going to hear from the public who's talking about the governor ruined my marriage and how I don't get my favorite gluten-free cheesy bread anymore. It's not about me, being glib about their personal struggles. It's not that. It's just to say, if we're going to have that conversation, I want to also have the conversation of who are the people affected by 11,000 Ohioans dying? Who are the people affected by the 47,000 that have been hospitalized, and et cetera? We've had over a dozen Ohio lawmakers alone that have gotten COVID since last summer. Over a dozen.
It's crazy. In fact, I found out today a friend of the show, Ann Feeney, passed yesterday. Of COVID. She was 69 years old. She in the labor community, she was the voice, the song voice of the labor movement for decades. And to have her pass from COVID, is one of those things that, angers me because it didn't have to be. Because sadly, we can't come to what used to be kind of a common sense. And maybe it's just me that I think we used to have a little bit more common sense in the past. Because, there's part of me that goes, the hearing that we're talking about over this SB 22, where legislators brought these people in, brought this child in to say, I'm angry over the ball. I don't get my cheesy bread. Oh, I don't get to see the concerts. I would want to believe in the old days, someone would just walked up and slapped the legislator for bringing that on, because that's not germane to our conversation. What we should be talking about is how we make sure that people are able to be safe and still do the things they need to do and hold others accountable who aren't. To me, I don't really care about your cheesy bread or your concerts or your ball, for that matter.
Yeah, and to be clear, one of the more consequential things, and this was really the key to my article today, besides even just having to deal with the kind of minor inconveniences relative to the broader deadly pandemic we're all dealing with, is yesterday's hearing was interspersed with people spreading misinformation about masks, spreading misinformation about vaccines. We have anti-vax groups in Ohio that are represented at these hearings. The president of one of the most prominent anti-vax groups was there yesterday, and she just gets an open floor for 5-10 minutes to talk about how, just vaccines are not tested. I don't want to spread all the things, but you can imagine.
Right.
And we have a Republican legislator that starts to tell this third person anecdote about, I heard from a relative who said that they got a vaccine and then felt weird. I'm not sure if it had anything to do with the vaccine, but can you, the president of an anti-vax group, can you now comment on that? And it gave her even more minutes to talk about it. And so you just have these people that, the beauty of the legislative process with committees is that it gives an opportunity for regular citizens to come in and tell legislators directly to their faces what they think about bills. Obviously, that's a great thing for democracy. Obviously, that's great for the State House. The other side of the coin is it then becomes an opportunity for bad actors and for people that are spreading misinformation to come in and just give it unfettered. And all this stuff is unchallenged. They don't challenge on the anti-vax stuff. They don't challenge on the anti-mask stuff. It goes unchallenged. It's just kind of frustrating.
No, it's crazy. But, and what it's turned into, and like these hearings have been for a while, it's just political theater. where the people bring in their people to testify, and they already know the answers to the questions. They're just teeing up, beach ball size softball questions for them to just throw out, as you've said, some of the worst misinformation. And I go back to Giuliani and the Trump bandwagon coming here to Gettysburg, and that whole ridiculous show that they put on. At some point, is there a way of pulling that back, or are we just stuck with this?
Stuck with having misinformation?
Yeah, there's got to be a way of at least putting people under oath and saying at least what you're saying is somewhat true.
Yeah, I will say that it depends on who it is leading the committee and what types of arguments they're allowing to be propagated or not. I will say that the committee that we're talking about yesterday, they don't require masks in the Ohio State House. It's required in every other public place. If you go to a restaurant, you have to wear a mask to and from your table. If you go to a gas station, if I go anywhere, I have to wear a mask, except for the Ohio State House is exempt from the mask rule, which lawmakers take advantage of and the anti-maskers that are testifying take advantage of. And I will tell you that even though they don't have an anti-mask rule or a mask mandate, they were lining up chairs, but they were like flipping some around so that the idea being, we're going to force social distancing because you won't be able to sit, side by side. And the people just come in and they flip the chairs back around and everyone's sitting there and the committee chair doesn't say a word. And, it's just. But here's the thing that bothers me, Tyler, is,
it's one thing to, as I said from the beginning, I think the two of us, I think if we got it, we'd be okay. I think we'd get through it. It may have some side effects down the road, but I don't know that it's killing either one of us. I think what's happening and what's happened is we've made this a political issue to where now, because it's become so polarized, it's actually so much worse than it had to be. And that's a real problem. I mean, we have people who are doing things in the most defiant ways because they believe it's an ideological position. And look, the virus is raging out of control. I mean, finally, we're coming down a little bit, but now we don't know what these mutations are going to end up being. And it's all because we didn't do the right things at the beginning. And today, 450,000 people, we've crossed that threshold. I don't even know where to go with that. I'm so ticked off.
I think for me, what's so striking is just that we have to keep fighting these battles. We had to fight, I just mean the state of Ohio and reporters having to put out good information for people. And that this turned into a political battle of wearing masks. It turned into a political battle of what kind of shutdowns we were going to have. Now vaccines has been the latest political battle in Ohio. The new chair of the Ohio Health Committee, the Ohio House Committee on Health, just was in a big report from AJ Plus about being quoted talking to an anti-vax group saying, I have to stop this expletive from coming to Ohio, basically. This is last April. So we have an anti-vaxxer basically leading the Ohio House Health Committee. Just so much of this stuff has been politicized. And the fact that we're almost a year into this pandemic here in Ohio and across the country. And it's like, we still have to have these battles about whether to wear a mask or not. We still have to have these battles about, that masks are effective, that the vaccine is proven, that, you just go down the list, that social distancing is worthy. It's like, it's just like we haven't learned. That's how it can feel sometimes.
No, and I get that for the average person, but I don't get it for our elected leaders, because they're supposed to have access to the best information. They're supposed to be able to get anybody they want to answer questions. And you expect more from leadership. At least I do. And I look at Ohio, much like Pennsylvania. It just seems like there's just this insanity that has gripped both parties. And that you have you have the Republicans that just will not budge.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. I talked to a Democratic lawmaker today who said when they came to yesterday's Ohio House of Representatives floor session, it was one of the first of the term, and they walked in with a mask. They said that Republicans through the doorway laughed at them for wearing a mask.
Yeah, see, I've had that happen.
It's February 2021. We've had a mask mandate since last July. We've had masks be, basically publicly promoted since what, last March, last April, since February 2021. We're still laughing about it. It's
crazy.
It's dispiriting sometimes.
And sadly, you get these people who whip up the dim among us, and they do crazy stuff. Because look, as a reporter there in Columbus, I'm sure you were part of all of the anti-mask stuff as they were storming the Capitol and doing all that stuff. I guess I'm just stuck in this place where, I look at people and I go, how can you, just common decency. How can you, look, if you don't want to wear a mask in your house, do that. But when you're out around other people, it's a mild inconvenience.
And these are the kinds of things we think about in response to when Governor DeWine released his budget proposal a couple days ago. One of the big things was he wants $50 million for a public relations campaign, basically a tourism campaign for Ohio. But instead of touring Ohio, he's thinking like, I'm going to promote Ohio to, smart millennials in San Francisco that want a cheaper, smarter place to live.
Because it's a progressive state.
So he gets asked by a reporter, says, I've talked to younger people and they say that they've either moved away from Ohio or they're not sure that they want to move to Ohio because of some of the legislative priorities and some of the things they've seen during COVID and all this stuff. And DeWine responds with, we're a very welcoming place and we're a progressive state. So I don't know if he means politically progressive. I assume not. He's a conservative Republican. I don't know if he means culturally progressive. I don't know if he just means generically, just we're a forward-thinking, innovative place. In many ways, we are. I love Ohio. As much as we talk about the frustrations of different things, it doesn't take away your pride of home. But to call it a progressive state when we have Republican supermajorities that won't require masks, that some laugh when a Democrat walks in the room wearing one. It's just an anecdote. But
that is a bit too far. It reminds me when I was a kid, and I talked about this the other day when Cleveland decided they wanted to be like New York, and they wanted to come up with a fruit. New York was the Big Apple, and Cleveland was going to be a plum. I have no idea who the hell thought of that, but there was a whole PR campaign around it. They had bumper stickers, T-shirts, they had all kinds of craziness. Didn't really hold though, because I'm sure you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. I am from Northern Ohio, but I hadn't heard of the plum.
Yeah, it's crazy. But Tyler, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. I'd love to talk to you again at some point, and stay safe.
Absolutely. You too. Hope to be back on.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Tyler Buchanan, reporter over at the Ohio Capitol Journal. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.